there's definitely no shortage of inspiration living here in Newfoundland. And walking around downtown St. John's, there's so much color, there's so much beauty, there's so much architecture. It's all very, well, inspiring. So, inspired a little bit by my teenage years when I would spend countless Saturday afternoons digging through the vinyl stacks of one of my favorite places, which was Fred's Records. Today, we're going to paint a little line and wash of Fred's Records. It's a beautiful building and a lot of color, and I think you'll enjoy it. Okay, let's get our drawing started. I like to draw the lines first, not because it makes it like a coloring book kind of thing, but because it gives me that nice little detail of all the edges and so on, so that I can actually play around with it a little bit. And you don't want to make it too fussy or too tight. Just relax and enjoy, sketching a little with your markers. So I love these buildings. They're so pretty. I'm going to start with my size 8, because I want some of the lines to be fatter and some of them to be a little bit thinner. So I'm going to just turn this on its side a little. And I love the size of these buildings. And I'm not going to use a ruler or anything again. I'm just going to very loosely put some of that siding in there. I'll do the other side while I'm on there. And then some of the little details at the top of the building. And it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, you kind of don't want it to be perfect. You want it to have a little bit of, I don't know, spontaneity and life to it. Again, it's not like I don't put a pencil sketch on there beforehand, because of course I do. One of my favorite places to go. I'm going on a walk downtown or checking out a few places. Fred's was always that place when we were kids that you could go and check out all the best vinyl. It's awesome, and it's still there, and my kids like to go there. I love that. Now, of course, St. John's is known for its lovely steep hills. So this is actually on a bit of a hill as well. So let's get that. Kind of avoid that little sign there in the front and just kind of mark that across there. And that little bit behind. As it comes across. And then there's that little bit of a sidewalk in the front. You can tell I'm not being very precise. Yeah, that's a good word, precise. I'm not being very precise with these. I did do architectural engineering in school, but it's not, I like the drawing part better. Yeah, I think we're going to switch to a slightly smaller one. Yeah, my 5. And we'll do some of those smaller details. So our little sign out front with its little legs. Gotta love a good sandwich board. Yeah. And we'll come back up the top here. And I promise when we go to paint, these lines will be lovely and dry, and it's permanent ink, so they're not going to bleed, they're not going to smudge. It'll be grand. whole idea is you don't want it to be overly perfect, or we're aiming for a little bit of whimsy and life in there. There we go. So there's our little window, and a little ledge underneath. Nice. And then we've got a little bit of space in here. I love the framework on some of these buildings, and the really nice wooden clapboard on the sides is lovely. And there's this piece in the middle. And down we come again to our window underneath. I like to switch up the size of the pens just because it gives it a little bit more dimension, I suppose. Finer details done with the finer nib pen. Makes me feel good. There we go. So there's our first side, and then we'll do our second one. I think what appeals to me about some of these older buildings is not just the fact that they're all very brightly colored, which is awesome, and I love that. Very big on color. I know it's hard to tell. But because they're all built on a hill, it's all about the balancing out the tilt in the foundation and the character that they have. And I love that. It's different. And something, you know, unique to sort of hilly, older towns. And this is our first window on this side. A little bit of a ledge underneath. And then down to our little piece in the middle. I should just come all the way down with this one on the side. There we go. Better. And our second window underneath. I don't like it that angle. There we go. Yeah, okay. We've got our windows on the front. Windows to the world. Okay. And there's a little sign that goes all the way across the front of the building. It has their little tagline on it. For the record, it's Fred's. These lovely big shop windows in the front. I love how deep the doorway is. You have to walk across this little ledge almost to get in to the front door. It's set back so nice and far from the sidewalk. Go. And got some framework on the edges of these windows. Lovely. Need that little bit of depth in there. And then there's the pieces across the bottom. Nice. Bring that all the way down. Now, last but not least is the sign on the side of the building with the actual store name, which is really cool. Very retro font. There you go. Nice. I did basic outlines and things, but you can actually do little bits of detail and things, which are nice too. Like these windows have sort of framework that comes all the way down. So I'm going to switch to an even smaller pen again and just add a few more details. There we go. I'm going to go down to my number 3. Number 3. So these windows have little pieces in the middle, the little sashes, I suppose. And I like the framework that comes all the way down. I'm just going to give a little indication of that framework. That little corner edge. Okay. And these little sashes in here. There we go. And the inside of our door frame. Big old glass door like that, so you can see in, which is nice. And talk about friendly humans. Wow. These folks are some of the friendliest people you'll ever meet. A little bit of an edge because the sign actually steps out, stands out from the side of the building. So I'm going to put a little extra line down one side and give it that little extra bit of depth in there. I'm whispering again. I got to learn to talk faster. Not faster, louder. There we go. Okay. So we're going to let this lovely ink work dry before we go in with our watercolor, our wash. And we can always add some more details afterwards as well. So we'll let that dry a little now. Once your ink work is dry, this is actually a really good time to kind of go in and take out any pencil lines you don't want to see in the final product. But again, make sure your ink is dry, because if not, you'll smudge that a little bit. Mind you, once that permanent ink is dry, she's on there. It's good. There we go. That looks good. And I'm going to take my smallest pen, which is my, no, not one. There it is. My 005. And I'm going to put in some even finer details. Little things like there's a million posters in the window. So I'm going to put a few posters in there. There's always several in the door. Sometimes there's a little sticker or more on the sides. For various things. Put some on the top part here. A few in here. Nice. Couple little lines in there. Edges up here. I think at the very end, once I get all the color in there, I'm going to go in and do a little bit of clapboard detail because I like that. All right. One last little detail before I put down my small pen. I'll put the street number in here because Fred's is at 198 Duckworth Street in St. John's. You should check it out. Yeah. While we're waiting for our ink to be really good and dry, I'm going to use my spray bottle and I'm going to wake up my watercolors. Yep, sound effects. Has to come with the sound effects. There we go. And I promise that in the description below, and of course in the video, I'll let you know exactly the supplies and colors and everything that I'm using today. And I've got my favorite brushes, which of course are these Princeton Velvetouch. Love them. I love them. Now I'm just going to give you a little demo of, you can see these lines here from my ink pens, and if I go over them with the paint, no smudgies. They stay on there quite nice. Yeah. So one of the biggest appeals of this building in particular is the colors, of course. And Fred's is this really lovely, vibrant, purpley color, which I've swatched a couple of purples, and I think this is the closest one. I like this one, which is Dioxazine Purple. Okay. Yeah, get my brush nice and wet. And I know that the framework is going to be a little bit lighter and the body of the building is going to be a little bit darker. So if we just kind of go over all of it with a little bit of water. Again, this is meant to be on the loose side of things. Loose morals. Don't have loose morals, ladies. All right, we'll start with this side and this part in between. It's also going to be purple. Yeah, just a little bit of a color wash on there, and we'll load my brush up with some of that nice purpley color. And we're going to go in and create a nice wash. Now, I've gone over my little edge there a little bit. I'm just going to lift that out. Yeah. And then keep going with my purple. And again, I'm not being too precise or anything. I'm just giving it a nice general wash. That lovely purple comes down around that framework really nicely. And in between those windows, those little spaces are also purple. So we'll add a little bit more color in there. It's such a vibrant looking building. I like it very much. And the window. And then in between. And if you find it's drying out in a few little places while you're trying to get that wash on there, just add a little bit of water to your brush or add a little bit of water to your paper and go to town. Like right there, I find that's a little bit dry, so I'm going to add that in there. There we go. Okay, so we've got our windows left out, and then we'll do the other side. It's okay if I've got a little bit of purple left on my brush because it's all going to be purple when we're done. That lovely bluey purple color. A little bit of our water on there. And we'll load up with some of our purple. And we'll go right up under our eave like that. Come across our framework and come down the sides of our building. Where we're not being overly precise with these, sometimes they tend to go a little bit quicker, which is kind of fun too. Yeah. A little bit of water there in the middle, and a little bit more of our purple. The wet on wet gives you the opportunity to get a wash on there with without a lot of harsh lines in between, which is nice and even and fun and lively. And that's what you're going for with this kind of thing. Something a little bit lively, a little bit fun, a little bit more on the relaxing end of things. Got our purple all the way down there. Oh. Gotta add in that framework there. Yeah, okay, so it's the top part of our building. And we'll come down around the bottom. And our purple. Not sure why I have to say it like that, but there you were. And we'll leave our little sign out. I don't want too many harsh lines, but it does happen from time to time that you'll get a few, so I'm just going to blend them in a little bit as I go. And I'm going to loosely go around the Fred's sign. I love that sign. A little bit of nostalgia for me. My high school sweetheart and I spent a lot of time flicking through the vinyl in there. Miss him a little bit. He's a great guy. He passed away last year, so that's why I miss him a little. He's a funny soul. And we've been friends ever since. If you go to the Facebook page, actually, for Fred's Records, you can actually find a picture of me flipping through the vinyl when I was probably about 17 years old, which wasn't yesterday. Definitely not yesterday. That would have been back in the 80s. And man, look at the hair. Woo! I had great hair. Yeah, I think I've got my wash all the way over. Okay. And we'll let that dry a little bit. Now, while we're waiting for that to completely dry, we're going to put some little fun details around the outside. So I'm going to add a little bit of water around the top part here so I can build in a little bit of sky. And I'm going to say it's an after supper time. So the sky will be just a little bit darker, but not so dark that it's nighttime or anything. Let's see. Need a little more cerulean blue in there. And then a little bit more of something a little bit darker. Let's use a little bit of our phthalo blue. Pull that in there too. And just a little touch of indigo to sort of drop that off a little bit. There we go. Soften that out a little bit on the edges. Yeah. And you wouldn't really see it around the side because, of course, there's a building on either side of the building. We'll put in a little bit of our sidewalk down here at the bottom. And I'm going to do a little bit of wet on wet for that sidewalk with some buff titanium. And while it's nice and wet, I'm going to charge it with just a little bit of burnt umber. Just to warm it up a little bit. And let that blend across. And our roadway, because of course this is right on Duckworth Street. A little bit of wet, a little bit of Payne's Gray. Kind of set that off a little bit. A little bit darker towards the edge of the curve, I think. There we go. Nice. And swapping out for a smaller brush, I'm going to take some of that Payne's Gray and just go in and fill in this lovely little chimney stack at the top here. And I've loaded that with color, and I'm going to rinse tap dry my brush and just lift out a little bit of a highlight on one side. It gives it a little dimension, lightens it up a little bit. I like it. Okay. Now, almost dry, almost there, almost. Okay. Let that dry a little bit more. Yeah, that's good and completely dry. So we're going to add some of our darker, no, just more details. Some of our finer details. Okay. And I think the trim work is a sort of a lovely orangey yellow, golden yellow kind of thing. I'm going to use Naples yellow, I think. I think that's pretty. There we go. Yeah. Make sure that's nice and wet. And if you need to give it another little spray, give her. Now, the pieces at the top are this lovely yellowy orange. I want to call them crown molding. Is it crown molding on the outside of the building? I don't know. But I like it. There we go. And I'm going to just pull a little bit of a highlight on the front too. And darken up those other ones because they're further away from your view, so it adds a nice little bit of depth, a little bit of dimension. There we go. Lovely. Okay, and then that comes all the way down the side as well, these lovely pieces along the side. You can see how bright and happy these buildings are and why they're so appealing to so many people. Very, very colorful city in St. John's. Matches up with the colorful people that live in there too. There we go. Just going to darken those ones at the top a little bit more on the sides. Yeah. Okay, I like that. And this piece that comes across the middle here is actually, I think it's like black, dark gray. We're going to use our Payne's gray and come all the way across because I don't want it too dark. Because if you make it too dark, it's going to stand right out and make everything else look pale by comparison. There we go. That looks good. Yeah. And this little step down here at the bottom is also gray. And I'm going to use a little bit of water first. And then some Payne's gray. And then spread it a little bit on the front of the step after it's worn off your brush a little bit so that it's a little bit lighter. Yeah. Okay. And then our foundation along the bottom is also gray. So we'll just drag a little bit of Payne's gray behind that side. Ah, the sound effects. There we go. And I'm going to take some of my burnt umber and just come along the edge of that curve in the front. So it could be a little bit dark, I think. Just to Give it a little bit of an edge. There we go. Lovely. Okay. Now then, as I mentioned before, the framework around the windows is a little bit lighter because it stands out further than the building itself. So we're actually, with watercolors, you often start with the lighter colors first and you work towards your darker. So I'm going to go back in and wet my purple, my lovely purple, because I'm going to go in and do a second wash to darken up some of those areas just to make them stand out a little bit more. So the inside of these panels, oops, I hit my head off the camera. They're darker. So we'll go in and darken these up. And that'll make the framework stand out as well. That little bit of difference in the colors and so on just adds for the interest and enjoyment. You can see it's making the framework stand out just a little bit. It's going to be quite nice. I'm not being overly careful about staying within the lines, but I like that. I like the idea of it being a little bit loose. Here we go. Yeah, that looks nice. Okay, and we'll continue on the other side. And this is just the same shade of purple that we used in the base. But where we wet the base first, it of course diluted it a little bit and it made for a slightly lighter shade, lighter value. And now that we're using it without using the wet on wet, we're doing wet on dry, it's giving it a darker shade plus the translucency of the watercolor adds to layering that wash. It looks really nice. Add a little bit more water to my purple because it's starting to dry out a little bit. It's a really nice warm day here, so things are drying a little faster. That's a little panel there. Yeah, because these pieces stand out from the building itself, I'm actually going to put some darker color under there as well, just to give it the idea that There's a bit of depth there. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to do those little panels down here under the windows, the front store windows. And inside that little doorway, that little step-in doorway. Maybe I'll go around the framework a little bit too, just to get it to stand out a little bit. So it's looking kind of flat down there at the bottom. Like that. There we go. And a little bit around the frame. Yeah. And then the frame of the front. Like that. Yeah. And I think I'll put a little bit of a, almost like a shadow underneath here. Not too much of a line there. There we go. Okay. Oh, forgot that little piece above the door. Yeah. Okay. Now, we'll work on some of our windows. Yay! So with our windows, because they are going to reflect a lot of what's going on outside of them, with a little bit of the see-through, of course, in behind, we want to add a little bit more dimension by creating lighter windows on the front and a little bit darker on the sides, and then that'll give it a little bit more value. So we're going to, oh yeah, minus the cat here. Awesome. Thanks, Lois. And we'll wet these front windows with our clean water, and then we're going to get a little bit of our lighter, and we'll pull that across there, and then maybe a little bit of our cerulean, and a little bit of indigo across the top and the sides. And a little bit of my damp brush, I'm going to pull some of that out in little places and move it around a little. So that you get the idea that it's reflecting a few things, but also, yeah, there we go. I promised there was a sentence in there. So, clean water on our front window, and a little bit of our phthalo blue, and a little bit of cerulean blue, and then a tiny bit of our indigo along the edges. And then we'll push that around a little and lift that a few things. And I'm whispering again, I'm sorry. Sorry. And I'm going to take just a tiny bit of pink and touch in there because it's later in the evening, so you're going to get some of that pink from the sky. Yeah, okay. So then for our side ones, we're going to make them a little bit darker. Again, we're going to do wet on wet, but we're going to use our indigo. And we're not going to lift them out. We're just going to let the indigo sit in there and flow around. Yeah. So again, same on the other side. You put your clean water down and your indigo. And let that float around a little bit. And I'm purposefully sort of going around the outside edge on this side because this one is closer to your light. Still not as much as the front, but a little bit more than the other side. So it'll end up being a little bit lighter and create that little bit more dimension. So same on this side, our clean water and our indigo. Ooh, that's dark. Yeah. And on the other side, clean water and our indigo around the outside edge. No, there's not very much water in that spot right there, but I'll add a little bit and see if that helps out. So we're going to do the same wet on wet process with these windows on the bottom as we did on the top, but with different colors because the lights are on in that level. So we're going to wet that area and then start with a little bit of burnt sienna around the edges. And then a little bit of cad yellow in the center to push it back because it's a lovely warmly lit apartment, I'm going to guess. And a little bit of green gold in there to just touch that off. Maybe a little bit more burnt sienna on the edges. So I like that warm orangey color. Yeah. And then with a damp brush, so rinse, tap it off a little bit, we're going to lift out a little bit in the center. There we go. Let's go push that around a little bit. Yeah. And we'll do the same on this side. So wet our big center window and a little bit of burnt sienna on the sides. And then cad yellow in the center. Yeah, I like that. A little bit of quin gold for good measure. And a little bit extra. Oh, cat hair. Oh, love my cat. A little bit of burnt sienna on the edges just to deepen that out a little bit. And once again, rinse, tap, and lift out the center. There we go. You might even want like a bit more of a lift in that. Yeah. Yeah. And then we go in to do the sides, similar to what we did at the top. We're going to do them a little bit darker on the sides because, of course, you got more shadow in there. So still with a little bit of water and your burnt sienna. And Queen Gold. Yeah. So, water. All right, there goes my phone. Thanks, phone. Burnt sienna. And Queen Gold. Yeah. Oh, there's still a little bit of yellow on my brush. And I also just found a piece of framework that doesn't have any purple on it. We can go back and fix it. So, burnt sienna. And again, a little bit darker on this edge than the other. A little bit lighter on this side. And come in with our Queen Gold a little. Yeah. Okay. So then we've got the top level. Nobody's home up there. Definitely people at home in this level. And they've got a warmly lit apartment. It looks lovely. And then, of course, there's the storefront. So we're going to go around the windows in our storefront and do, again, similar kind of thing. Wet on wet, charge with a little bit of color. And we're going to try and avoid the posters that are there because the posters would be different colors again. So let's start with this window over here. And I'll wet just in between a little bit. And we'll use some gamboge yellow for in here. Nice and loose. And then, of course, some of the fixtures can be seen. So I'm going to drop in a little bit of Payne's Gray just to indicate that there's some stuff inside there that you can see, but not necessarily make out exactly what it is. But it's creating shadows in your window. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So same for this window on the other side. We're going to add our lovely clean water around the outside of our posters. Then we'll grab some of that gamboge yellow and mess that around in there a little bit. And that is the technical term, mess that around. You don't want it too even, you want it to be, yeah, random light hitting random things. And then a little bit of our Payne's gray for different fixtures in there. Let's see, there's probably something across the back there. And down the side. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Lovely. And then we're going to do the windows inside the little doorway in there. So again, clean water, gamboge yellow, and maybe a little bit of Payne's gray in spots. Yeah. And a little bit of clean water, lather, rinse, repeat. And a little bit of Payne's gray. Okay. And around our numbers up here, because this is glass, and the numbers are painted on the glass. So we'll drop our gamboge in there. And there wouldn't really be any fixtures up there, so we're just going to leave that with just the yellow. And our doorway window. So clean water all the way down the front, around our posters, little gamboge yellow. There we go. And this one I have no doubt you'd see all kinds of things through. So we'll add some interest in there with our Payne's gray. Yeah. Now that that's a little dry, I'm going to go back and fix that framework with no purple. There. See, almost everything is fixable. And if not, you roll with it. Okay, this is starting to take on a really nice look. I like this. We're going to go in and color in the Fred sign, which is this nice warm orangey yellow, Naples yellow that we used for the outside frame. I'm going to do the same thing in here. And boy, does it ever look nice against the purple building itself. I have no doubt that's why they chose it, because it stands out so nicely. You cannot mistake the place. And there's all our letters filled in. Yes. Okay, we'll let that dry a little and we'll add a bit more detail. Okay, so we're all dry. We're going to add a few more details in here. We're going to go in and do around the door, some of our posters, and this little sandwich board out front. So let's see. I would imagine some of these posters have great color in them. And some of them might be black and white. But let's add a little bit of fun color to them. Let's see. kind of a bright and happy spot. It's always a bright and happy spot. They always have good music playing. Great people in there to talk to. It is a phenomenal spot. I am randomly choosing these colors. Let's see. A little bit pink there. There we go. I think I'll leave those other two white. There's maybe some little detail like that. Yeah. Okay. And our little sandwich board down the front. I'm going to use some darker shade on the inside. And then wet the front. Use just a little bit of color to show that's the front. Okay. And our door frame in here is a little bit darker, so our Payne's gray will be perfect. We're getting close to being done, and it's looking real colorful and real happy. Okay. Now, just to sort of, I don't want to leave it so that it's looking like it's floating in space, because there are definitely buildings on both sides, but I don't want to add a whole lot of detail to them because I don't want them to become part of the focus. The focus is, of course, this one building. So I am going to, the building on this side is red with a little bit of a black roof, and this one on this side is green. So what I'm going to do is just put a little bit of water down that side and indicate that there is actually a building there. So I'll get a little bit of my red, and we'll kind of do this down one part where that base of that building is. In there, and a little bit of our Payne's gray for the roof area. And I'm going to soften that out so that it's not smooth or focused. And let that run a little bit. Pardon me. And again, on the other side, I'm going to do the same kind of thing, but with the other color. Soften that out a little bit. Just a bit of clean water on our brush will help you do that. Now, this is coming along nicely. Okay, and we'll let that dry. Now for some of our final details, I'm going to add the lettering on this long side across the front. So I'm just going to use my teeny tiny brush, 18/0, and I'll add that in with my Naples yellow. And it's not going to stand out hugely, but that's okay. Because again, you don't want to take the focus from the building itself, which is lovely. Yeah. And I'm gonna, with that same brush, I'm gonna put a little bit of gray on there and maybe add some fake info on our posters. Just for a little bit of fun. Yeah. And on our sandwich board down the front. Sandwich. It's getting close to lunchtime. I might need a sandwich. There we go. And I'm going to actually darken up that roadway just a little bit because everything else is so nice and vibrant that kind of pales off at the bottom, and I'm not a fan of it. So put a little bit of water on there just to keep it loose and soft. And a little bit more of our Payne's gray down there. Yeah, that's better. Now again, we're going to let this dry, and then we'll go back in with our pens and actually add a little bit of detail, and it'll make it pop right out. I think you'll like it. Now that we've got our color laid down and everything is nice and dry, I'm going to take my number 5 and I'm going to add a little bit of shadow detail where some things might be a little bit larger and you might see a little bit extra edge. So I'm adding a little bit of an extra edge on the inside of the windows, the underside of their ledges. Yeah. Same over here, and you'll see a bit more of that edge on here. Again, not going to be very precise. Yeah, I like that. That makes it stand out real nice. And inside edge, and underneath. Nice. Okay. I'm going to drop down to my number 3 and just drop in a little bit of framework as well. Just in a couple little spots to add a little consistency in there. Like that. And there's going to be a little bit more of an edge under here, which you can see. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Now, as I had said earlier, I'm going to add a little bit of like an indication of the clapboard siding, because I don't want to put too much in there because it'll look weird. But I just want it to be a little bit recognizable that that's what's all over the building. And it's that narrow wooden yeah. Okay, we'll do some in the middle. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, I'm going to put a little bit of shadow on that eave work up there too. A little bit of our, let's see, yeah, a little bit of it because it's Payne's gray. And I'm going to go along just underneath there, because that part kind of comes out over the building itself. So yeah, okay. And then a little bit under here where there's some shadow as well. And a little bit down here by the door, because we know that's nice and dark in there. And a little bit on our front step there, I think, because that's quite dark. And that'll make that stand out just a little bit more. Yeah. Yeah. Just for a little bit of extra detail, I'm going to go in with some of my purple and add to those little clapboard lines. Not all of them, just some of them. And I think that'll be a nice little bit of illustrative detail. A I'll just add to it. Yeah. There we go. I think that looks nice. Now, if you feel the need or the desire to go in and add a few more details with your pens, you absolutely can. Once your paint is dry, you can go in and mark all over it if you like. We're at that point where I'm going to say, hey, a girl from the East Coast would really love some of your love. If you could like and subscribe to my channel and maybe leave a comment in the bottom below. Let me know if you've ever been to St. John's or if you've ever been to Fred's Records. It's a wonderful spot. You should really check it out. But I hope you've enjoyed painting this and drawing this with me today. And I'm really, really happy that you were here. Thank you so much and have a great day. And I can't wait to see you next week. Bye.